I did something stupid. Again. This is gonna be... Hello and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. I am your host Tyrant, where we take things from movies, TV shows, pop culture, try to create them in the real world and test them one-to-one from the media that they come from. Now in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at something from One Piece. Yes, Arlong Sword to be specific, a big giant serrated sword. Mine won't be giant, I should caveat that, but we're going to be building Arlong Sword and testing it. Now I should mention that today's episode came about because my two younger brothers love One Piece. Personally, I'm not a fan of One Piece. I'm more of a Dragon Ball type guy. So many One Piece fans already regret clicking on today's episode. Forgive me. Yes, Arlong Sword is quite an interesting design and I'm fascinated to see if it could be made functional. Now there's a couple of caveats I should mention here. First off, it has like a katana handle. It has a wrap on it, which is actually quite comfortable, so I don't really have an issue with that. And it is from Japan, it is an anime. So I don't actually mind that. It's interesting. Then we have a round pole, which extends up the length of the blade, which is the spine of the blade. It's an interesting choice for a shape because it's not really the best cutting shape, I should say. Then we have very, very thick, like we're talking like an inch thick, pieces of steel, serrated steel in the shape of shark teeth. It's a very intimidating weapon. The issue I have with it is it's too big. If I was to make this one-to-one, it would be like a Guts sword dilemma here. It'd just be too heavy to wield effectively as a proper sword. You'd be very slow if you're able to lift it at all. So I'm going to be optimizing my design to make it a more functional sword, around about the 31 to 32 inch range. And I'm also probably going to make those serrated teeth a lot thinner. They do not need to be an inch thick. That is crazy. So I'm going to make them nice and sharp, nice and nimble. So hopefully we get a really functional sword out of this and we can test the design. This one isn't too complex of a build. However, it is a little bit repetitive because there's a whole bunch of big serrated teeth. I am going to have to cut each of those individually with the angle grinder and then take them over to the belt sander and other grinder to sharpen them up, all one after the other. Then I needed to put some holes in all of them so that I can attach them to the spine of the blade. Now for the spine of the blade, I'm going to be using some flat steel bar. It should hold up reasonably well, especially for the moderate testing we're going to be doing with this blade. Then after that, I needed to put a wrap on the handle. Now I wasn't going to put a full katana wrap on. I'm just going to put something a little bit more basic that still has the same sort of visual cues as Arlong Sword. And with all that out of the way, it's pretty much done. Time to get to some B-roll and then the testing. So Arlong Sword is ready to be tested, at least a more optimized design. Even this optimized design with these thin serrations or teeth is still super duper heavy. However, I do think for this type of weapon, that will actually give it a lot more mass in the cut and actually make it a lot more devastating. But there's only one way to find out. Let's get started with the testing. We'll start with some water bottles, very simple cutting medium, just to make sure our edges are sharp and that it can cut at all. F***ing hell, this thing is heavy. I kind of just closed my eyes for that one and wished. And holy shit, that's crazy. I did not expect it to like cut it in half. I expected one tooth just to eviscerate it and then that was it. But hey, it cut it in half. Let's do it again. Okay. Sorry, Marcus. I got Marcus in the face. But it cuts. Holy shit. Look, like, okay, these are serration teeth, whatever you want to call them, but the gap between them is excessive. It's crazy. So I just expected it when it was to cut through things, it would get stuck in the gaps that are unsharpened. However, these blades just seem to be gnarly. Okay, so we're upping the ante a little bit this time. This bottle is like 3 times thicker than a regular bottle. This is a very, very thick plastic. Let's see what it does now. I mean, interesting. So I need to... Well, I'll be damned. Holy shit. Okay, let's try some different mediums. The sword is holding up so far. I don't even know if I can call it a sword, this monstrosity. And this is a pumpkin or whatever this thing is what it is. The reason why I got this is because it has more of the fibrous flesh, so we'll actually be able to see what the blades are actually doing when they interact with a different medium. Let's do it. Let's do that again. What happened was, I think I hit in between the blades rather than directly on a blade. And then we shall slice it straight in half. Okay, we're performing pretty good. Let's keep going. More mediums. New game I invented. Arlong's throw. A long throw, Arlong's throw. Okay. A standard pool noodle, nothing out of the ordinary. This is where I expect this to do not much. I expect this is where it's kind of going to fail, actually. There's caveats. Okay. It sliced more than I thought it was. I thought it just smashed through. Turns out it actually did. It cut it. Let's do another. I didn't bring that many pool noodles because I was like, yeah, it's not gonna get through pool noodles. It's a giant serrated piece of hunk of metal. But it did. So now I only have one more pool noodle left. That's a cut. There's some teariness there, sure, but that's a cut. If you haven't already, you should consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it and helps out the channel. And thank you to everybody who's already subscribed. It cut it in half on a horizontal. What the actual f***? This was not how I expected this to go, to be honest. All right, so pool noodles are a finicky medium. There's a reason why they're used with cutting swords, right? Is because they're very unforgiving. So if your blade is not sharp and if it doesn't have a good cross section, let's say, it'll struggle to get through pool noodles. This is a terrible cross section. It's sharp, sure, but it's giant jagged teeth. And it's cutting. Actually not bad. Okay, I'm impressed. Let's move up to Tony because I want to see how much damage this does to Tony and his armor. And how the weight of this thing is insane. Oh, it's punishing. Tony's here. He has his armor on, and I have this beast. Let's hit him. That one I felt go through, straight through. I think it's that one there, right there. Let's try it on Tony's bare back. Yep, that went in. Arlong Sword from One Piece. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how well this cut. Now, something we should mention is that obviously this is not like a one-to-one design of the show or the manga's version. Obviously that would be, it would be worse because it's 10 times bigger, 3 times thicker. Like, it wouldn't be a usable, wieldable weapon. This is the length of a sword for the most part, and it actually performed far better than I thought it would. I've also optimized the design so we have a lot thinner blades. We have a wieldable weight. I can't stress that enough. Even this weight though is kind of excessive. This was on the heavier end, if I'm being honest. All right, but let's get to the rating. Let's talk about how would I rate this on Tyrant's functionality score, or whatever the we're gonna call it. Let me know in the comments if you've got something. If you don't know, what we do is we take a fantasy design and then we will rate it in 4 separate categories. In each category, you have a maximum of 10 points for an overall score of out of 40. So let's get started. What would I put this as? First category, comfort. Honestly, it's complicated. It's supposed to have a katana wrap. That's what the original design is, so I'm not going to fault it for my wrap. But the problem is the weight distribution of this affects the comfort because it becomes very hard to actually wield around. So in terms of comfort, I would probably be somewhere in the 6 range. It's comfortable, but there are times where it can be a little bit uncomfortable because of that weight. Next up, we have the wieldability, and this kind of rolls from the comfort. It's kind of hard to, it's not impossible, it's not, you know, super difficult. It's one of those things where it's more of a specialized weapon. You would have to train specifically to be able to wield this thing super effectively. So, wieldability, I'd probably give it around about a 4. Now, this could go up or down depending on the design, because I'm talking more specifically my design that I have made with, you know, reduced weight, more optimized blades. If we were talking about the weapon straight from the manga, it's like a 0 because you can't wield it, it's too heavy. It's wielded by like an 8-foot shark man. So this design, I would give it probably, yeah, around about a 4 for wieldability. It's not the worst thing that I've ever swung around, but it is also not the best either. Okay, so design. This is where I expected actually for it to be terrible. I have been pleasantly surprised. I do think that there are things in this design that can be optimized further. For example, the length of these teeth, I still think is excessive. I think you could have the same amount of deadliness and effectiveness with shorter serrations. It didn't impact cutting performance as much as I thought it would. In terms of the design of the original weapon, like we said before, it's from an anime. This is more of a realistic design. In terms of this realistic design, I would give it probably like a 5. I'm somewhere in the middle. It's far more effective than I thought it would be. But at the same time, like, if I was to choose this, would I choose this weapon as my weapon? No, I wouldn't choose it as my weapon. However, I would also not want to go up against it. I really would not want to go against someone wielding this, but as I said, I wouldn't personally choose it. So I'm somewhere in the middle, around about a 5. And then lastly, we have effectiveness. Now this is where, I mean, there's not many faults here. Obviously, all of the things add up. I'm probably sitting on around about a 7 for effectiveness. This thing is kind of deadly, it's dangerous. Quick little caveat that I'm gonna cut in here, I forgot to mention this earlier. It kind of had the Wolverine effect, and this actually decreased its effectiveness overall, and that was when I would strike larger targets like Tony, the points were all sharing that surface area. Something that I wanted to add in, and if you've seen the Wolverine episodes, you know how much of a pain that can be. So quickly wanted to add that in as a little bit of context. But it doesn't have many defensive options, if I'm being honest here. Maybe catching some blades in the serrations, but the weight of this thing and the wieldability, they all kind of compound to make it less effective overall. But in a general sense, it is pretty deadly. And that gives us a final score of 22. Out of 40, that's pretty good. We're over the halfway mark. I would say that's rather respectable for something like this. In terms of a dangerous, deadly weapon, it's actually not bad. I thought this was gonna perform way worse. But hey, I've been wrong, and I'm pleasantly surprised about this one. All right, this thing's hurting my arm. Thanks for watching, guys. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below of what you thought of today's episode. Did I do it justice? Hopefully I did. Hopefully you enjoyed. And as always, I'll see you in another episode. Have a good one.